Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Hustle Years. I am your host, Jacob Johnston. Hey, I got another interview for you today. This one is over the author, Guerrilla Marketing for Job Hunters 3.0. He is the co-author of one of the best-selling books and being able to find creative ways to get ahead in your job search and land the career you are looking for. I've read his book. You know, it's starting to get a little bit old, but the great thing is the tactics still work. Why do they still work? Because so few people actually implement it. Now, when you say, best-selling author and so few people implemented it, so let me try and clarify that a little bit. One, being a best-selling author, you could do that and get only 2 or 3% of the population. So there's another 97% of the people that are not getting this tactic, that are not getting this information and being able to implement it, which means in listening to this, and if you go off and buy the book, you can go ahead and get an advantage in your job search. Remember, not everybody's an entrepreneur. So if you're saying that you have no interest in getting a job, then this may not be the show for you. But I would suggest this. Sometimes you need to be able to get a day job in order to fund you being able to launch your entrepreneurial career. There is a great book out there, not over how to find a job, and I don't have an interview with this, although I will be trying with John Acuff. His book is called Quitter, How to Go Through and Launch Your Dream Job from Your Current Job. So anyways, another thing here is that even out of all those people that read it, it does take a little bit of guts in order to implement some of these tactics in order to be able to land the job. And so even out of all the people that have read the book, the amount of people that are going to implement those tactics have the guts to do so is going to be a little limited. Plus, there is a lot of different tactics that you can use. And so even if everybody implemented the tactics written out in this book and the things that we are going to discuss in this interview, you're still going to be able to use it because there's so many different tactics that you could just choose one, and chances are there's a lot of people that chose a different tactic and this was going to work. And you also have to think about the industry in which you are applying for a job. You do. You do have to think about that because the different industries have different norms. And so what may be perfectly acceptable and appropriate in one industry may not be appropriate in another. So, review the tactics that are laid out here in this interview and in the book itself. Take a look at all of that and then figure out which of these tactics are most appropriate for the industry that you want to get into. And even if you have the money to launch your career, maybe going in and taking a job in that particular career field and getting some experience is not necessarily a bad idea. So if you can intern at a place that is in an industry that you want to be able to work for, do it. Just do it. Okay, so now let's go ahead and get into the interview. Since I'm doing videos live, I want to make sure that up front before I get into the interviews, I give people enough time to be able to get on the show, get on the feed. And I am broadcasting this simulcast, so you'll see this on Facebook Live, you'll see this on YouTube Live, you'll see this on Periscope, and you'll see this on YouNow. And this is all being broadcasted, so wherever it is that you are watching this, you've now had enough and ample time to get on your preferred platform to be able to see this. And as always, I will take the audio from this and put it in to iTunes. So let's go ahead and get into the interview here. I'm still working on my interviewing skills, and hopefully you can put up with the amateurish way in which I interview. And in the next episode, I'm going to give you details on how you can become a guest on the show. All right, so let's get into the interview, and I hope you enjoy. I had read your book, and that's what prompted me to reach out and contact you, because honestly, it was one of the best books I have ever read on job searching.
Thank you.
You know, and here's why. A lot of books will tell you, just find what you like, find what you're passionate about, and, give you the, cover letter, resume, but they never give you any of the tools in which to actually find the jobs. They're just figure out what you want to do, submit the, resume to the company and hope for a call. But you gave a lot of strategic, how to make the approach, how to find the decision maker, and that's what I really liked about your book. And so, before we dive in too much further, can you give us an overview about you and what you do?
Okay. The first thing that the audience will probably want to know is, do I have any experience applying for jobs? And the answer is yes. I've applied for approximately 1,000. I think we counted the other day. It was 1,073 jobs. I've gotten 1,021 of them. Let me explain that. I'm a recruiter. I'm a professional headhunter. I've been in the business now for 28 years. I've run my own firm, Perry Martell International, for 26. What I do every day is essentially the same thing job hunters do. I go looking for projects. I go looking for jobs to do, whether it's hiring a CEO or years ago, an entry-level person for retail. I have to go and compete in the marketplace to find the opportunities and then convince an employer to hire me. I've now done 1,019 of these projects. I've negotiated $250 million in salaries. It's over $1 billion in total comp. And in the 28 years I've been doing this, I've made exactly 3 hiring mistakes, and I fixed all of them. So that's me in a nutshell. I'm a professional headhunter. I was asked, it's almost 10 years ago. I was asked 10 years ago by J. Conrad Levinson if I would be interested in writing guerrilla marketing for job hunters. And I said yes, of course, because I'm the one that hinted about 6 months earlier that we should write this together. I had just written a book called Career Guide for the High-Tech Professional, where the jobs are and how to land them. I had asked Jay to write the foreword. I'd never met him, but I asked him to write the foreword, and he agreed. So when I handed him his copy of the book at a seminar he was given in Toronto, I live in Montreal, I jokingly said, hey, we should write guerrilla marketing for job hunters. And 6 months later, his agent called and said, hey, want to write guerrilla marketing for job hunters? And I said, sure. So this is the 3rd and final edition.
And final?
I will not write a number 4. I put those, I don't need to. Because everything that everybody ever, most everything anyone needs to know about how to get a job are in the 3 volumes. The last volume uses social media extensively, and the last volume is as much about how to be found as how to find. And I'm sure we'll get into that. But I also put those barcodes in the book, and I intend to use the barcodes. Those scanner codes for your smartphones? I intend to use that to continuously update the book, so I don't have to go back and write another one. I mean, it's a couple thousand hours for every single book to get it out.
So you're talking about those QR codes.
That's the term. See, I'm not even a techie. Thank you.
Yes,
and in fact, when I put the QR codes in, that book, that edition, was the first time QR codes had ever been put in a business book. I had to fight like you wouldn't believe to get my publisher to put them in. I used the Microsoft ones, and Microsoft did an article, extolling the virtues of putting QR codes in books. But that was the first book that had ever had them put in.
Yes, and those QR codes are very helpful in a lot of situations. And, I may come and ask about your opinion over some different ways to use them as we go forward.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's go ahead and start diving in to more of the questions over what people can do to set themselves up to be able to find a great job. Because one of the things that, got me started here, why I decided to create this show, is because I've realized, like many other people, I absolutely suck at job hunting. you know,
Everybody does.
yes, and so
Everybody does.
so you know, and my generation was pretty much raised as computers, computers. You're everybody's gonna want you. You're Gen Y. You grew up with computers. Everybody's gonna want you. And then just as we're starting to graduate, from high school and going into college, these job boards start coming out, a Monster, Career Builder, and everyone's just like, just submit your resume to there, just click apply to every position that you can think of, and you're going to land a great job. Turns out that's not true. Who would have thought? So this is in developing this show is me doing a research on how to conduct a proper job hunt, and then sharing that information with as many people as possible, so
Okay.
that because getting a good job can set yourself up for a life of success versus a life of hardship and struggle. And that's what I want to try and help people with. So I guess the way I do this is more of a chronological. I'm going to start from back in, just in college, and then work our way as we get older as far as what we can do.
Okay.
Okay, so let's say a student is in college right now, and, they're, whether they're a freshman or a senior. What can they do while they're still in college to show that what they have learned has given them the skills and abilities needed to land not just an entry level, doesn't pay you anything position, but actually a well paid position, maybe starting off, in the $60,000 to $70,000 range, as opposed to the, $30,000 to $45,000 range.
Okay. Well, the difference between getting a job, a good job, and a great job comes down to a couple of things. Experience, obviously, attitude, and reputation. No one's ever asked me this question before, but experience, attitude, and reputation. Experience. When you're coming out of college, what an employer wants to know is, what do you know? And how much time am I going to have to spend now that you've gotten out of college and you actually think you know something? How much time or how much more time are we going to have to spend educating you about our business and our organization? Are you with me?
Yes.
Okay. So what you need to do, if you can, and most people can if they think about it, is you need to get some kind of experience. I'll give you an example in a second. You need to get some experience in the industry that you want to go into. I always tell job hunters who have been around for 10 or more years, if you want to get a job, you have to know who you are, what you want to do, who you want to do it for, be able to pick your top 10 employers. Almost impossible when you're a college grad. However, it's not totally impossible. If you understand the industry you want to go into, let me give you an example. I had a friend years ago. Well, he's a friend now. I didn't even know him years ago. I was recruiting for a tenant fit-out coordinator for a construction company, and this one particular guy just kept calling me every single day. I mean, like, I didn't take his call. It went on for a week or more. He drove me nuts. Dominic is his name. Finally met this guy because he just wouldn't leave me alone. And I'm not suggesting people do that, okay? It's not necessary. Most employers would just get upset. I enjoy the persistence, and I honestly was busy at the time. This guy wanted to be in construction. And I said to him, I got your resume here. I said, you're what? You're like 12 years old and you don't have any experience. He says, sure, I have experience. I said, what do you mean you have experience? He says, I worked as a janitor in a hospital. I said, and what makes you qualified for a tenant fit-out coordinator for a commercial construction division, even though you've just graduated with XYZ? And he said, you got to be kidding. He said, I know, as the janitor, part-time janitor at night and on the weekends for this hospital, I know every single inch of that hospital. I know what the design flaws are. I know why they should have used this paint instead of that paint. I understand why they should have used terrazzo instead of the vinyl flooring that they use. I understand where they should have put the wires rather than where they put the wires, and why they had to retrofit the HVAC system. And of course, not being a construction guy myself, I had no clue what he meant. Okay, so as a recruiter, you got to understand this thing. As a recruiter, just because the guy sitting across the table from you, if you're a student, is recruiting for a job, it doesn't mean they know anything about that job or have any experience, okay? They may just be parroting information that they heard from the employer, whether they're a third-party recruiter, like a headhunter, like an agency, or whether they're a recruiter for an internal company. They may or may not know anything about the job, and chances are pretty good, 99.9% of them won't have any clue. I was one of those guys. I hadn't got a clue. But the difference was, I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. Let's sit down and have coffee. So we did, and we had this discussion over coffee. And he took me through why his background and what he had done prepared him to look at design issues, do tenant fit out, because a tenant fit out coordinator looks at flooring, walls, HVAC, all that kind of stuff. When you buy a condo or a house, you get bare walls, and you and your significant other have to pick, the flooring, the paint, the type of kitchen, the lighting, all that kind of stuff. That's what a tenant fit out coordinator does. So this guy explained all this to me, and I said, oh, that's interesting. So I called my client and I said, listen, I got this guy. He might be 23 years old. I know we're looking for someone with 10 years experience. Let me tell you why he doesn't have 10 years experience, and you're going to interview this guy anyway, other than the fact that he won't leave me alone, and I'm not really trying to foist him off on you, but he won't leave me alone. He is persistent, and he does have the experience that we're looking for. And I took him through the conversation that I had had with Dominic. So set the interview up, kid goes over, has the interview, client calls me after the kid leaves and says, this is 1980, like a bazillion years ago. This is 1985 or 86. He said, we had a budget of 25 to 28 for this position, okay? So 3 decades ago. And he said, I like the guy, we're going to hire him. I said, so he's got no experience, what am I going to offer him, 25? He said, no, just give him the 28. I said, why? He'll take the 25. Here I am arguing as a recruiter, right? I'm arguing, why pay him so much? He said, pay him the 28, because if you don't, he's going to be in my office every day asking me for the other $3,000. It's not worth it to me. So just, David, make him the offer for 28 and he'll be happy. So what has all this got to do with your being a college grad? If you go and get experience in some area of what you want to eventually do, then you can translate that experience. My son wants to be a doctor. What did he do? He went and volunteered inside a hospital at the, I don't know what they call them in English, the kiosks, selling, newspaper, chocolates, and all that stuff. Because he's inside a hospital, he's getting to meet nurses, he's getting to meet the doctors, he's understanding what some of the issues are. He has more chance of getting into medical school and becoming a doctor than someone who doesn't do any of that volunteering. And I can go on and on and on and on, industry after industry. That's the kind of stuff you want to do. So you get experience. Your attitude about who you are and how you present yourself, very important. We're having this discussion today. And really, most people don't have the stones to have a discussion when they go for an interview. They sit back. That's why I asked you, do you want me to answer the questions yes or no, or do you want to have a discussion? Most people go into an interview, most candidates, and they sit and they answer because they're terrified. Questions, and they think these questions that they get asked are deep probing questions. And in all honesty, most interviewers are probably about as nervous as the person they're interviewing. Probably haven't spent more than 5 minutes looking at your resume. May understand the position, may not. But here's the critical issue. If you've been invited in for an interview, they want to hire you. Full stop. They have a problem that for some reason they've seen something in your resume that indicates to them that you might be the solution to that problem. So if you've got an interview, you're going to get hired unless you blow it. So what you have to do when you go for an interview is take the employer quickly into a discussion, rather than sit and answer interview questions. And people say, well, how do I do that? That's impossible. They're in charge. It's really easy. Give you another example. My sister, and we're going to go back way back again, okay? 1990 something. Graduates, teacher's college, goes out to Vancouver on the West Coast, gets a job. She's got like 2 years experience. She applies for this job as a kindergarten teacher. I don't know if this is in the book or not. It wasn't one of them. Applies for this job as a kindergarten teacher. Now, kindergarten teacher jobs are highly coveted. So she calls me and she said, well, you know, I'm probably going up against 300 or 400 other people for this interview. And they had an 8-month time window to do all these interviews before they selected this teacher. And I said, okay, well, you know, what do you want to know? She said, well, what can I do to differentiate myself? I said, well, first of all, go in and be yourself. I said, you know, they'll never forget you, but that's a whole nother story, right? And I said it nicely. I said, but Monica, what's important to you and what's important to them? It's an interview with them about you, but it's really about them because they've got a problem that they're going to get you to try and solve. So why don't you come up with a list of questions and go in and ask them those questions almost right off the bat. She said, well, I can't. It's a panel interview. I said, absolutely you can. I said, here's what you do. You go into the interview and the first thing you say is, you know, thank you very much for inviting me. I said, and then you tell them, I'm a little nervous, as you can tell, I'm a little nervous. So do you mind if I ask you a couple of quick questions just to ground myself and orientate myself for this discussion? She said, they'll let me do that? I said, all you can do is ask. Anyway, goes, has the interview, calls me back, and I said, how'd it go? She said, I don't know. And I said, well, what'd they ask you? She said, well, not really very much. They didn't ask any questions? She said, no, not really. I said, how long was the interview? She says, about 9 hours. I said, what? I said, okay, Monica, exactly what happened? So I went in, and the first thing I did is I did what you said. You know, I said, do you mind if I ask you a couple quick questions? Because I'm really kind of nervous and I want to ground myself. And they said, yeah, fine, go ahead. So the first question I asked them is, you know, can you explain a little bit can you explain to me your philosophy on teaching? What's unique in this board? I said, and? She says, and we talked. And they ordered in lunch. And I said, what do you mean they ordered in lunch? What time did it start? She said, it started about 9 o'clock in the morning. I said, what time did it finish? She said, about 5:30 in the afternoon. And I started laughing. She said, oh my God, did I blow it? I said, no, Monica, you did exactly what you're supposed to do. You went in, you had a discussion. You talked about philosophy, expectations, you know, success factors, what they expected from their kids, all that kind of stuff. You talked about what they wanted to know from you without actually having to sit there like a dummy and answer questions. You got into a discussion. She says, oh my God, do you think I blew it? And I'm laughing. I said, no, I don't think so. I think you'll hear back relatively soon. You know, within the month. She heard back a week later. They canceled all the other interviews. They hired her. She was maybe 26 at the time, probably youngest kindergarten teacher ever hired in the district. And she's been there now. Well, I can't tell you how old she is, but she's not that much younger than me. She's been there a long time. So there's an example of, you know, we have experience, we have attitude. And the last one I think I said was reputation. And that really is, you know, I was looking the other day because I talked to my kids about this. I said, you know, if you've got a job and you're going to leave, get a letter of reference. I have letters of reference and recommendation that go back to my first training job as an Army cadet officer. They go as far back, which is 1979. I have letters from my boss at the yacht club when I was a dock boy pumping gas for 4 years at $1 an hour, plus all the tips I could hustle, and I could hustle a lot. Reputation is what it's all about because people want to work with people that have great skills. Everybody wants to play with Gretzky. Everybody wants to play on Gretzky's line. Everybody wants to play on Michael Jordan's line. Okay? You want to be the guy that everybody wants to play with. You don't want to be the last guy picked. You know, like in school, you don't want to be the last guy picked for dodgeball. You want to be the first or second. That's all about reputation. And reputation comes from delivering the best you can, asking a lot of questions along the way because nobody knows everything. And most employers' greatest fear is that they hire someone and the person screws up and they don't find out about it until it's too late. So I tell my kids, when you don't understand something, stick your hand up. Even if it's right away, stick your hand up. You know, the first couple minutes, say, sorry, can you explain it to me again? to make sure you clearly understand what's going on. And you end when you do that throughout life, and it becomes an attitudinal thing, like it's a life skill. Your reputation precedes you, and so this is important because now we have all the social media stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I get a lot of requests to join to connect with me on LinkedIn. I was the 113,709th member, like week 3, right? A lot of the recruiters, a vast majority of the recruiters around the world can be traced back to, you can see what everybody's number is because everybody has a number. I made some of the initial invites for recruiters all over the world. And because social media, like LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook, you need to manage who you are and what you're doing. So I get all these requests for LinkedIn all the time, and I will read every single one of them. I've got 32,000 direct connections, so it's like 40 million indirect, right? And every week I get 300 or 400, and usually Friday afternoon when I'm pretty much brain dead, I go through them because I have to. I have to accept some, and to do that I have to delete a pile of others. It's just the way it is. So every week I accept a couple hundred and get rid of or divest myself of a couple hundred. So I read all these requests, and I'll accept someone, and then I'll go and look at their profile again, look to their personal website, look to their Twitter, and see if it's someone I want to be associated with. And many times, I can't tell you how many times, I didn't count, but many times, I'll find, and it happens a lot with women, God knows why. I've gotten, gone to someone's personal website and found pictures of them hanging upside down, semi-dressed from a pole. I don't need to be associated with those type of people, and I don't want to be. So it's really important that you manage LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. If you want to be found and asked for the best jobs, you really do have to monitor that stuff quite carefully. It doesn't mean you don't be yourself, but you got to be yourself with a little bit of taste.
Yeah, you got to be careful about what other people can see you as, because perception is reality. And as
I wish I said it that way. That's excellent.
And as I've heard many times, that in today's world, you are who Google says you are.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when somebody who doesn't know you is trying to look you up for the first time to see if you might be a fit for the company, and that beer keg that you're doing a headstand on may not be the image that they want to project for their corporation or their business.
Yeah, it might not. It might be. But I'll give you an example. But if they don't know you, they can't judge you, but they will anyway. And a lot of people, David Perry is a very common name. And I remember, it's probably 6 or 7 years ago, before my mother died. She called me up and she said, "Did you know that you're a porn star?" And I said, "What? Have you been talking to my wife?" She says, No. She says, "I learned this new thing on Google." It was Google Images or something like that. She said, "You're a porn star." And I said, "Okay, listen, I don't even want to ask what you were doing, Mom. And I don't really, but thank you. I'll go and make." So I became David E. Perry, because David Perry is a porn star and relatively well known. So I became, on my books, David E. Perry. Just to clarify that. So those kinds of things happen all the time.
Well, there's getting through and trying to make sure that when someone looks you up, that you identify yourself in a way that you're not getting mixed up with somebody else. I mean, you can go online and you can type in my name, Jacob Johnston. You're going to get a whole lot of, profiles that pop up, between Jacob Johnston, and even through that, they'll even use Jake Johnston, that will pop up because that's a common nickname. So being able to manage, your online presence so that, when you give someone your resume and they search for you, that your actual profile comes up and not somebody else's. Because even with, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, you got your picture up there, but, when you submit your resume, your picture's not on there, so they're not able to distinguish between you and another person with your name. So
and it's very important. Now, don't mean to interrupt, but while you're on that topic, it's really important to have a LinkedIn profile. People, I think, are well aware of that. A lot of people aren't aware that they should take their LinkedIn profile, throw it through one of the the shorteners like Bitly, and stick a link to it on their resume. That way, if you're doing a 1-pager or a 50-pager resume, it doesn't matter. If the person wants more information, they don't have to ask you for it. They can go and get it instantly. Very important.
Well, I was actually going to get to that, later on about maybe using the QR codes on your resume so they can scan it and go straight to your LinkedIn profile. So we'll get into that discussion, maybe, here in a little bit. But I wanted to do one more follow-up question on what those in college can do to prepare themselves for that first job. And there's a debate about getting that experience between student groups and organizations on campus and internships. I have a feeling I know which way you're going to go on this. As far as the internships, being good, and that's where you're going to want to try and go with. But if you don't get that internship, how are those student groups and organizations looked at by recruiters when trying to seek your first job?
Great question, and I'm not a big proponent of internships, by the way. It probably surprised me, but I'm not. I think student government, I think sports, I think having a job where you've been for the same place for a while, getting a dirt underneath your fingers, whether it's a restaurant job or a construction job during the summer. I look at those things like I ask job hunters one question when I'm interviewing them. It doesn't matter whether it's for a director position or CEO. It's the same question I ask everybody in an interview, and it's very simple. I say, take me back to the year you're getting out of college, and take me through your career up to now. And the reason I do that is I wanna look at who they are as individuals. And a lot of people will say, well, I got out of college and I decided and I was going to take the summer off. Or I got out of college and I decided I was going to go to Europe. Or I got out of college and I went straight to New York. It doesn't matter what they did. What I want to understand is why they did it and whether or not as they progressed, were they or were they being pushed along or pushed out? So I only ever asked the one question. What's this got to do with college? Well, I like and have hired people, many people over the years who have had summer jobs, have started something like student pro painters. Did you have a pet when you were, sounds silly, did you have a pet at home? Why is that important? It tells me a lot about whether or not you can take care of people and you're responsible. Did you have a summer job? Did you have any other kind of job? Did you start your own business? I want to understand whether they're entrepreneurial, whether they take responsibility, or they're just drifting through life. And most recruiters that are interviewing college level grads are going to be looking for things like initiative, stability, being able to work in a team environment. I hate the concept of the whole aura around team, because you need to be a member or a leader. And I'm not really looking for a hangers-on. I'm looking for leaders. So you have to be very careful when you say, "Oh, I'm a great team player." Yeah, but are you the captain, or are you the schmuck warming the bench?
Yeah, and one of the things that has always gotten to me about the whole team environment is what is considered a team environment these days is really a stretch. I mean, everything's considered, a team environment, even if, your entire work involves just you having no interaction, with the people around you, just processing work, and yet it's considered a team. So maybe, I don't know, to me, it seems like the word, team kind of gets abused in a way.
Team player has been abused enormously. HR asks for it because, well, I have a relatively negative opinion of HR. I don't know anyone that's ever gotten out of Harvard, Yale, Cambridge, Oxford, and said, "Yeah, I'm going into HR." It just doesn't happen. But I digress. So putting HR making HR responsible for finding your best and brightest, I have always found to be an oxymoron, in full bloom. Now I'll get calls about that, but I'm used to it. Yeah, you need to distinguish when you're talking about a team environment. They're going to want to know whether you're a team player or not a team player, and whether or not you can actually make the hard decisions. I'll give you an example. My oldest daughter, Krista, 24 years old. When she was 20, she was at an arts school in communications, and they had this contest once a year. There's like 150, 200 students. And they took the top 12 pieces that were created, art pieces that were created by the best students, and put them on display in the forum for the people to come, parents to come and see, right? So out of 200, you got 12 people that they're showcasing. So my daughter was one of these 12 people, and she didn't like the piece that they chose, so she went and asked them, "Why did you choose that piece?" Asked the teachers. They couldn't really give her, in her mind, a satisfactory answer. And she said, "Okay, well, I don't like that piece, so I'd like you to use this piece." And I said, "No. It has to be this piece." She said, "Well, either you use this piece or I'm out." So they took her out, which is fine. That's what she had figured was going to happen. What she did is she went down the hallway to the principal's office of this college and said, "Listen, I'd like to rent the following 3 rooms and the hallways in the school. Here's the money to do that." And so while the teachers ran an art show in the foyer for the top 12 students, my daughter ran an art show in the 3 largest rooms in the college and all the hallways. So the other 188 students whose art wasn't picked were all given a space on a wall to demonstrate their stuff. It was the best turnout they ever had for this art show. Because you can imagine, top 12, maybe their parents come, maybe their friends come. Everybody came for this thing, and everybody got to display it. Why is that significant? Because she was punished severely for having done this. She was quite within her rights, and she paid for it and was all above board, but she embarrassed the teachers. And so her name was taken off of a bunch of lists for awards and stuff like that. Now, was she a team player or wasn't she a team player?
Both.
Yeah, so the answer is you're correct. And the teachers looked at this the wrong way. So you got to decide what's right and what's wrong, because you're going to be asked these kinds of questions in interviews, and you got to be able to say who you are and what you're all about. And a year later, Krista calls me and says, "I'm starving to death in Toronto, working at Starbucks for $10 an hour plus tips." And she said, "I'm coming home for the summer, and going to get a couple jobs, make a lot of money, and go back." And I said, "Fine." So she comes home for the summer. She applies to 14 jobs, gets 13 interviews, gets 12 offers, takes them all. And she took every single one of the offers, she took it. And she worked for a day, 2 days a week, until she found 4 that she liked, that she could fit in her schedule, 4 jobs. Worked 100 hours a week. And one night I pick her up at this yoga studio. She's into yoga, right? And she says, "Dad, I think I'm going to become a yoga instructor." And of course, she's 20 or 21 at the time, and I'm her father, so I don't know anything. So I just nodded my head, and I said, "That's interesting, honey." I said, "Didn't it take a couple of years?" And she said, No. I just met this woman, came back from India, and she got her certification in 2 months. And she said, "I'm going to go to India." And I'm her father. And I go, "Okay, right." Next thing I know, Chris has saved enough money, checked herself into an ashram, and bought herself a ticket to India. And away she goes. Is she a team player or not? She's a team leader.
Yeah. Okay, a team leader in that
Team leader,
situation,
and
she took
I mean,
charge.
you know, she can do stuff on her own. So she can play with everybody else, or she can lead. She can follow when she needs to. You know, she's 24 years old. Last summer, she couldn't get a meaningful job, so she did a fundraiser on Rocket Hub, you know, one of these crowdfunding sites, and she raised enough money to take her and her boyfriend from Vancouver. He's a photographer. She's a yoga instructor now, officially. So she raised enough money to go to Panama. So they fly to Panama. She lands in Panama, and she walks across Panama, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and back again, teaching yoga to random strangers. He took pictures, they blogged about it, and people paid to follow them on their blog. Yeah. Team leader, team player, entrepreneur. These are the kinds of experiences you can do as a summer student and afterwards that employers go, oh my God, you did what? Yeah, well, she's been to the Ukraine, so Peru, the Ukraine, India, Nepal, Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and probably a couple I don't even know about. And she's 24 years old. That's the kind of experience employers are looking for. Not everybody gets that kind of stuff. Some do, but people are responsible for their own lives once they turn 18, right? So you get to do whatever you want. So can you get out of college and go away to Europe for a year or two and have a blast? Absolutely. Is it going to hurt you in your job search? No. No. It's going to help define you. And then after that, you just have to find the right employer who respects or appreciates what you've done, and you bring that set of soft skills to their work environment. Does that answer your question, or am I too far off for you?
Well, I believe that actually does answer the question, because you've gone through and shown some ways that you can get experience, you know, part-time, you know, with your example of the guy in the hospital, you know, walking around. You've gone through, talked about reputation, you know, how to manage that, which is important for college graduates. And then in this case, when you're talking about team player versus leader, you know, student groups, organizations are, you know, just taking charge, you know, as your character and your ambition, as far as being able to show whether or not you're entrepreneurial or, you know, able to collaborate well, is just as important as the skills, sets and knowledge that you learn towards that specific industry, because it's not always just about what you know how to do, but they also want to know how you go about doing it. Are you the take charge, or are you the, you know, stay in place and wait to be told what to do?
Yeah, so if you're, you know, you ask the question, how can you go from making you know, being a grad who gets hired for a $30,000 or $40,000 a year job, or these days a $20,000 or $25,000 a year job, to someone who gets hired and paid a lot more? That's the way to do it. Those are some examples of ways to do it. You know, it helps you separate yourself from the crowd, and it helps the employer very quickly see that you're different. And you know, and for all of the it just blows my mind. For all of the energy that most people put into being unique and special, it all gets washed away by 99% of the people when they go and put their standard resume together. Black type, white paper, 1, 2, 3 pages long, full of responsible fors. Who cares? I know we're drifting a bit here from the conversation, but everybody's unique, and if you want to get a good job, one where you'll actually get some satisfaction and be able to make some decisions, other than when you're going for lunch, if you get to make that decision yourself, you need to step up and step out and be yourself. And those are a couple of examples of people, and I know thousands, but there's a couple of examples of people that did it early in their lives. Krista is 24. You know, she went off to BC to find herself 3 years ago. And, you know, she's doing personal work on herself that most people don't get around to doing until they hit a major crisis in their 40s and 50s, if ever. So she's taken a different tact, and she's sorting through her stuff before she goes out gets deeper into the working world and has no opportunity to do that.
Okay. And moving along now, because I think we've extensively covered what can be done while you're in college. Um, what are, and maybe this is related, but this can, be related to college or in any other stage of your life. What are some of the best practices that that you see of people finding ways to find an open position or to make that initial contact with the person who has the authority and the decision power to hire you?
Great question. Easiest thing to do is come up with your list of top 10 companies you want to work for. Doesn't matter whether they're hiring or not. Doesn't matter whether you know anyone or not. If you go to the first, if you go to the intro of the book, there again is Krista, right? Picks the top 10 companies she wants to work for, did a targeted email outreach campaign, ended up with an offer in a couple of days. The Starbucks coffee cup keeper, again, is predicated on picking the top 10 companies, whether or not they're looking for someone or not. And when you pick your top 10 companies, what you need to do next is network your way in. But you don't network with people that work there. It's almost a forget it game. We teach this strategy called networking with the newly departed. I don't mean dead people, but I mean people that used to work at the companies. Because if you're trying to network your way into a company, chances are your call that day is the third one they've got that day or that week. And everybody over the last 10 years has been networked to death. What you really want to do is if you've got your top 10 list of companies, you want to know as quickly as possible whether or not you really want to work there, right?
Yeah.
And if you spend all this time networking your way in, and then you find out through the interview process that, they're schmucks, I don't want to work there, you don't get that part of your life back. I mean, if it took 10 hours to do all this, that's 10 hours you'll never get back. The more expedient thing to do is pick the top 10, go to Google or LinkedIn, do a search for people that used to work at that company. So if you want to go into marketing at ABC Corp, you go to Google and say Vice President Marketing ABC Corp. Resume. Boom. Up will come all the resumes of the people that used to be VPs of marketing at ABC Corp. And you pull down their resume and you phone them up and you say, "Hi, Jacob, my name's David Perry. I just pulled your resume." And you can do this whether it's live or on a voicemail. "My name is David Perry and I just pulled your resume down off of Google. I understand you used to work at ABC Corporation. I'd like to ask you a couple of quick questions if you got a minute." And then leave your number. People will call you back. 9 times out of 10, people will call you back. And then what you do is you ask them a bunch of questions. They would typically ask an employer when you go in an interview. But because you're asking it with someone who used to work there, they're going to tell you the truth. They will. They're going to tell you the truth because they have nothing to lose. And they're not liable. Right? They don't have any hands-off or agreements that says, we can't talk about what goes on in this corporation. They'll tell you pretty much anything you want to know. Then you get through your list of 10. And if you've still got 7 or 8 that are in your top 10 and people are consistently saying, "Oh yeah, great place to work. The boss has really got the ear of the CEO," or whatever. And this has been done at every level, including entry, okay? Every level. Then you got a pretty good idea you want to work there. And you've asked the question, one of the questions that you ask is, what are the top 3 issues that the company's facing or that the industry is facing? So what happens, Jacob, when you go to an interview at one of these top 10 companies? You already know you want to work there. You already know what their issues are. And you already know how you can help them. So you can have a discussion like we're having today. You can have a discussion about their issues, their problems, what you've done in the past, even if it's nothing, you're a straight grad, what you've done in the past that can help them out. And all of a sudden, you're not there having an interview, you're having a business discussion. I'll give you an example, okay? Because people are going, "How is that possible, David?" Years ago, I went to work for a company called Consumers Distributing. In the States, there is a company, I'm not sure they're still around or not, called Service Merchandiser. Are you familiar with it?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, see, I'm just way too old. Anyway, it was a retail catalog store, okay? And I went to this interview, and I coming out of college or university, I got a degree. I've got my I won the Sword of Honor. I've got my commission in the Armed Forces. I just come back from leading an expedition to the Arctic for the summer. And the guy looks at me and he says, and by the way, when I went up to the Arctic and led this expedition, I decided when I was there, I was going to work for one of three companies when I got back. McDonald's, Canadian Tire, who you've never heard of, or Consumers Distributing. And the reason I was going to work for any those three companies is because they all had a reputation for taking trainees out into the back warehouse, putting their feet in a block of cement and throwing them in a pool. And it was sink or swim. But you learn so much about management, it wasn't silly in a couple of years. So I get back from the Arctic, Consumers has got an ad, I go in, I do the interview, and the guy says, why would you want to work here? And I said, you got to be kidding. He goes, no, seriously, why would you want to work here? I said, this is the only place, the only store in the entire country where anyone from, kid to grandparent can walk into your store and find exactly what they're looking for at the price point they want to pay. I said, you sell 39 irons. Why do you sell 39 irons? You sell 39 irons because you want to give everybody the right to shop in your store. That's why I want to work here. You are the great equalizer in Canadian retail. I was 22. Was I full of shit? Maybe a little, but not really. Because I honestly, I'm a shopper there, right? He hired me on the spot. I was there 3 years. I had a blast. Hired 451 people, fired 2, because they were on drugs, literally. But there's an example, right, of what I just did the same thing. I picked my top 3, not my top 10. I picked my top 3. I knew exactly why I wanted to work there. And I could say it to their face. And I could have a discussion about their issues on retail because I'd gone around and interviewed a couple of the store managers before I went in my interview there, right? And, and quite frankly, they weren't the brightest I'd ever met by a long shot, which made me feel good because, I thought I was going to be a star amongst, a bunch that weren't. But even that little bit of research that I did back in 82, helped, start me off in my career.
Okay, so, one of the themes or trends that I'm getting here is that even though technology may have changed, some of the best practices are still the same, as far as preparation and, going through and actually researching versus going in, saying, hey, this sounds like a great company, I'm going to go in blind. But actually making, reaching out and doing your research.
Right. 10 years ago, candidates would come to an interview with a recruiter, whether it was myself or a recruiter inside a company. And one of the first questions they'd always ask is, well, why should I work here? And the HR person would turn around and just pitch like crazy to, because you were solid gold. That doesn't happen anymore, Jacob. Now it's like, okay, I need a job. Here's why you should hire me. So all of the power, per se, has gone back to the other side of the desk, to the management side of the desk. And the only way you can equalize that and give yourself an opportunity to move yourself forward in the process is to consider yourself an equal at that table, right? Rather than you come as a supplicant to answer questions, if you come as an informed individual to have a business discussion about their issues, and that's research and attitude, okay? And you can help shape in their mind why they should be hiring you rather than somebody else. I mean,
and so this is where
this hasn't changed, but what has changed is you now have technology that makes getting this research done a lot faster. I mean, in the old days when I started as a recruiter, I had nothing but a telephone and the white pages and the yellow pages. If I did research, it's because I found somebody who would talk to me about their industry, and I took them out for dinner, and filled them with liquor and learned about the business. Now you can, Google will tell you just about anything you need to know about just about anything you need to know about.
Now here's where we get to have a little bit of fun here, and I want you, and I want to ask you, what are some of the more creative ways that people have reached out or demonstrated how qualified they are for a position? What has been, kind of the over-the-top, most creative ways that have actually worked?
That anybody that's been played on, that's been pulled on me, or that anyone else can use,
or that anyone else can use, that you've either seen done, or that you've heard of actually, having been done.
Oh, Jesus, there's a lot. My best friend, Kevin Watson, died a couple of years ago. But Kevin was for all of the tactics in all the Guerrilla books, with maybe one or two exceptions. Kevin was an engineer. And over the last, I guess about 25 years that we were best friends, I had multiple jobs and literally hundreds of interviews under every circumstance. So things that consistently work. Things that consistently work are micro-targeting the hiring manager. So you pick your top 10, that's great. You got to go and do the research on who that person's boss's boss is, and you go after them with a micro-targeted resume. Here's exactly, it's like we do these Guerrilla resumes, you're aware of that. When we did Kevin's, I was just doing a compilation a month ago, we actually did 17 different resumes. All similar information, but he was an engineer, and depending on whether or not he was trying to reach out and engage a CEO, a president, a CTO, a VP engineering, a VP product management, he had a specific set of skills and experiences that he encapsulated in that resume that got their attention. So we did this with the Trojan thank you letter, which I think you're aware of. The Trojan thank you note is, we came up with that. Kevin Donlan and I came up with that on stage in Detroit in 2009 because someone had a problem in the audience. You'd have to watch the video to figure out who it was. I don't remember. This person had a problem. We said, how would you like to control? And it just came off the top of our heads. And I said, how would you like to be able to control the mood of the person who reads your resume? Would that be helpful? Would it be good to have them automatically be in a great frame of mind and happy when they read your resume? Of course it would. So we showed them how to, you do your Guerrilla resume, do your Guerrilla cover letter, fold it all up. And what comes in a little envelope about this big, 3 by 5 inch envelope? Thank you cards and birthday invitations, right? You're not getting a subpoena. You're not getting divorce letters. No, it's a thank you note. So when you see these little cards, you're smiling, right? Yeah. So we show people how to do that and put it in that envelope, and what you say, and so that when someone opens this thing, they go, first thing that says, well, thank you for reading my letter, or thank you for reading my resume. But they're already in a great mood, so they chuckle and they read the whole thing. Well, 98% of getting an interview is getting their attention for about that much time so that you get your pitch. Seth Godin calls it interruption marketing, right? We watch TV every day. You see thousands of ads. Maybe one of them gets our attention. Most don't, because they're interrupting our television show. How dare they? Most resumes interrupt a hiring manager's day. They're not looking for you. How dare you reach out to them? Oh my God, why am I going to read this? And if it looks like black, and all resumes look the same pretty much. It's black text on white paper, and it reads the same with a big, a 5-inch profile of I am a gregarious, outgoing, competent, creative, blah, 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 blah. You can parrot, right? All these words are all the same. So they look the same, so it gets thrown out. So when you do something like the Trojan thank you letter, or do it in the thank you note card, it gets their attention. They read it. When you do the Starbucks coffee cup caper, and anybody can go on Google and type in Starbucks coffee cup caper Guerrilla, and you get the instructions on how to do it. I had a guy a couple of years ago, Greg Quirk was his name. He's a brilliant marketer, and we're living in Ottawa and couldn't get a marketing job. We sat down one day after working together for about a week. Sat down one day and I said, well, why don't you do a YouTube? This goes back like 8 or 9 years ago, right before anybody else thought to do this. So why don't you do a YouTube video on how to get more hits, on your YouTube video and do it for marketing people. So he literally he did a YouTube video on how to get more YouTube hits and sent it out there. And sure enough, he got a whole pile of hits and quite a few interviews and a couple of offers. Had a guy who contacted me, so YouTube is very possible. Had a guy, Grant, can't remember Grant's last name, but kid's getting out of college in California, and he calls me up one day. He'd read the first or second version of the book, I can't remember. Great guy. Calls me up and he says, I'm looking to get a job in a PR agency. I said, okay, that can't be that hard. He said, I want a gay-friendly PR agency. I said, okay, whereabouts? He said, California or, whatever. I said, fine, do the research. It's not going to be that hard to find them. So he did the research, found the companies that were open to his lifestyle, and he targeted them with a Facebook advertising campaign. First time a Facebook advertising campaign had ever been done by a job hunter. It's in the book. Many have been done in the meantime. But he targeted these particular companies, and in particular these individuals, with an ad, which when you hit his ad, took you back to his LinkedIn profile and took you back to his web page, which had his resume and his LinkedIn profile. And I think he targeted 10, got 6 hits, 4 interviews, 3 offers. In the case of a couple of weeks. So there are limitless possibilities to what you can do. And when you do something creative, whether it works or doesn't work, and most times it will, what you're doing really is you're stepping up, just like you would on American Idol. You can't go to American Idol, walk on the the little stage they have, and say to Randy Jackson, "Hey, Randy, I'm a great singer." Remember, you're on the way to Hollywood, baby. No, they want you to sing, right? They want you to perform. This is the same thing. Don't tell me you're creative. Don't tell me you're wonderful. Don't tell me you're dynamic. Show me. This is one of the ways to do it. And people come up with hundreds of different ways to do this every year. In fact, we're just debating it now. We're probably going to have a Guerrilla Marketing for Job Hunters is going into its 10th year as a book. Still on Amazon. Still in the top 1% of the top 1% on Amazon. I think we're going to have a contest on creative strategies and see where that goes. To help raise the profile of the book and raise the profile of the individuals that are looking for jobs. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And
all day long.
Yeah, I know we could probably go on forever about all the creative ways, but one follow-up question that I have. In today's market, you mentioned the Facebook ads, and Facebook ad is something that's being seen more and more, and we're becoming used to it. How successful is that continuing to be today? Say someone does a Facebook dark post or an unpublished post, as part of their ad. Now that we see those popping up all the time, is that still effective?
That's a great question. Let me ask you a question in return. How many people do you know that have actually done that?
For job hunting?
Yeah.
Honestly, myself, I haven't seen anybody. I just see all these companies marketing using the unpublished posts through the Facebook's Power Editor, and so I'm seeing that, and I'm wondering if that would decrease the effectiveness. But I think you just made a really good point as far as when I ask how effective it is. Well, it's kind of hard to determine that if nobody's doing it.
Thank you very much. Yes, you win.
I was just thinking.
I'm about to have fun. We go to I give these seminars, right? Now I'm just about to kick off a 10-city tour called Put America Back to Work. And I intend to help 1 million people in the States land new opportunities. Because last month in America, do you know how many people got hired?
Oh, last month?
Last month.
Let's see here. I know it's a lot higher than what the job numbers reported by the
government. Pick a number, Jacob. Pick a number.
I would say, I don't know, maybe about 5-10 million.
Wow, that's a big number.
I'm probably on the low side of it.
That's how many people got hired?
In the last month?
Yeah.
I'm just going to stick with that number,
That's interesting. Nobody ever guesses that. And you're not that far off. When you ask most people how many people got hired in America, most people say, well, there are no jobs, maybe 10,000 or 50,000. Truth is, there were 4.5 million people hired in July. Didn't see that in the newspapers, did you?
No, all I saw was the official, 200,000 jobs created, but that doesn't, account for the, for those who are switching from one job to
Yep.
another. That's just saying new jobs, but people are getting hired switching from company to company all the time.
Absolutely. You know how many jobs went unfilled? 4.8 million. So your guess was, so you take the 4.5 million that got hired and the 4.8 million that the jobs went unfilled, you got 9.3 million jobs that were in play last month. And you probably hit on the most important thing, Jacob, that no one pays attention to. The market is incredibly fluid. Last year in the States, there were 55 million employment transactions. What does that mean? That means people hired, people separated, and opportunities still open. And most people don't realize is we go back a month or two, there were 4.8 million openings. You didn't see that on the job boards. You didn't read that in the newspaper. Employers do not advertise anymore unless they're absolutely desperate. And the reason they don't is because in the States, when you advertise a job as an employer, you have to gather all the resumes, you have to quantify and legitimately explain why you hired the individual that you hired, and you got to keep all this stuff on record for equal opportunity legislation reasons. So if you run an ad, you don't get 50 or 100 resumes. You get 500 or 5,000, which, isn't bad because most companies have these applicant tracking systems, right? The black hole everybody talks about. So the technology takes care of some of it. But when you get 5,000 applications, you also get 5,000 voicemails, 5,000 emails to the hiring manager following it up. Why would they do that? No. What a hiring manager does now is they sit down and they think, okay, what do I really need? And they either reach out themselves, or they hire their internal recruiter, or they hire someone like me, and we will go out and use LinkedIn and social media, which is why this is so important. We'll go out and use LinkedIn to find those top 5 or 6 people that are exactly qualified for the job. We'll tap them on the shoulder and go, hey, Jacob, take a look at these jobs. Why don't you take a look at this? That's how those jobs are filled. That's what people don't realize. That's what you just hit on. That's not even the hidden job market. That's just the job market that's not, in plain sight. On top of that, there's the hidden job market, and no one really knows how big that is, but it's probably as large. And the hidden job market is nothing more than when an employer has an issue a problem that they want to solve, and they know they need to hire someone, and they haven't gotten around to doing it yet. That's a job in the hidden job market, and all of that can be found, and those jobs are much easier to find than playing, Russian roulette on the job boards or job board roulette. And when you take your top 10 and you go after the hidden job market, you're dealing with a pool of 1. So instead of being 1 of 5,000 who might get the job, because 4,999 aren't, you're 1 of 1. So you get it or you don't. But your odds are way better.
Way better. Okay, and going on to some of the social media, we've discussed job boards, and one of the things that when I take a look at social media, it almost seems like social media is becoming the new job board. You can set up filters and everything for all the postings that have hashtag jobs, and
Correct.
even in specific location. So when you say job boards, are you also talking about the jobs advertised on Twitter, Facebook, Google Plus, and LinkedIn, or are you just talking about the job boards, in a more traditional sense, such as Monster and Career Builder?
I was actually just talking about the traditional ones, because there's 52,000 job boards in the world. Average number of employees, by the way, 3. Average revenue, $1 million US. Just FYI.
Okay.
That's how big the industry is. And there's no one place you can go to put your resume up on all of them. Doesn't exist. So, how do you beat that game? You beat that game with digital breadcrumbs. You beat that game by being easy to find. You beat that by having good experience that's on your LinkedIn profile or your Facebook profile or your Twitter profile, because you can put all that stuff in so that you can be found. So you establish your digital breadcrumbs with your experience, your attitude, what you talk about, what you look for in opportunities, and your experience. It's all about Hansel and Gretel, right? They go out in the woods where their father was going to cut their head off. I mean, not everybody knows that side of the fairy tale, but they come back because they've left those crumbs, right? Those little breadcrumbs all the way back to the house. Well, when you're establishing your career, leave those breadcrumbs. And LinkedIn is it's like a giant loaf. Boom. Yeah. And most people have nothing on their LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, I know that
where they worked, and it's insane.
Yeah, I know that more people my age and even younger have not really utilized LinkedIn to as much as we do Facebook, Twitter, and yet if I remember correctly, 93% of recruiters are looking for people on LinkedIn. And if you don't really have a profile there, you're not going to be found. And when I, take a look at my friends, yes, we have LinkedIn profiles, but it usually goes something as no summary, job title, year, dates held, and that's it. No information, no descriptions.
Correct. And you're shooting yourself in the foot, because there's like 200,000 recruiters that go out every Monday to Friday looking for guys just like you. So why make their lives any more difficult? Or yours? Make it easy. Make it easy so that you get the call, and then you can ask the questions you need to ask to decide if you want to talk to this person or not. But at least get the call. You're not going to get the call unless they find you. They're not going to find you unless you put in the keywords that they look for. And this is not new to college grads, Jacob. I did a talk at the American Automotive and I can't remember, huge engineering forum in Detroit a couple of years ago. And I said to the group, I think it's in the book, so I won't repeat the whole thing, but I asked the question, how many exhaust systems engineers are there in Detroit? We went around the room. Eventually we agreed there's probably 5,000. I said, how many jobs for exhaust systems engineers are there in Detroit? This goes back 5 years. And we went around the room and they all agreed, none. So there's like 700 people in this room. And they're all engineers, way smarter than me. I'm just a very simple BA, right? So, and I asked the question, well, that's really interesting, because at 5:30 this morning, I found 13 of them. 13 of them on Twitter. I said, and I found 20, I can't remember the exact numbers, 23 on Facebook, and there were 30 on LinkedIn. So let me ask you guys, show of hands around the room, how many exhaust systems engineers have we got? And there was like 11 of them. And I said, stand up. And they all stood up, and I said, if I typed in, because I'm an engineer, I'm not an engineer, I'm a very simple recruiter, right? This is how recruiters think. Okay, I'm about as simple as they get. If I'm looking for an exhaust systems engineer in Detroit, and I go to LinkedIn, what do you think I type in?
Exhaust systems engineer.
Thank you. Exhaust systems engineers, Detroit. Nobody in the room guessed that. And then I said, okay, so if I type, it was bordering on insulting, right? But that's what I'm like. They're going to remember. I said, but I type exhaust systems engineers, $2,000. I said, I used those words so that I would have found you. I said, remain standing. If I would have found you, well, they all sat down. I said, and that's the point. You have to use the technology, especially keywords as part of the technology. You have to input in your profile the same way recruiters look for you. And it doesn't matter whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter, or any of the other, or Google+. We all use keywords and Boolean search strings to find people. If you don't give us enough detail about who you are, what you like, and what you do, you will never be found. If you're not found, you're going to be looking for a long time. And let me put it a slightly different way. It's easier to pick up the phone and say, hello, than it is to get the other person on the other end of the phone to pick up the phone when you're calling. And say, oh, hello? So make it easy on yourself.
Okay. And now I have another question here related to LinkedIn. I'm sure you've been asked this a million times. It's as far as I can see, it's the big LinkedIn's great debate. Your profile, should it be written more like a resume, or because it's social media, should it be written in a more personal manner?
So, yes. And what I mean by that is it has to be both, right? Because what you want to do is you want to be more social in my opinion, it's only my opinion, you want to be more social in your summary section. And then you want to have great detail about what you're responsible for, those responsible for is in the sections where you actually have held jobs. And there's a section now in LinkedIn, and the recruiting industry fought for this for years. You can now put in projects. Well, if you're an exhaust systems engineer in Detroit or exhaust systems engineering student, in a project in school that dealt with exhaust systems engineering, you can put it into a project section and get as much detail as you want to. And that makes you easier to find. Does that answer the question, Jacob?
Yes. I believe,
So
it has answered what, if I'm understanding you correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, in the summary section, you want to be more, social and, talk more about
be a real person.
A real person. And then in the work experience section, you want to be more professional, like you are in your resume. And then it was recruiters that fought for the, projects to be added in there, so that you could say who you worked with, what position it was in. And so I've looked at that. I've been looking a lot more at LinkedIn and trying to get it more updated. And I see that, they are doing more of a more of a portfolio where you can add in the graphics and videos and everything like that to try and better display, to really promote it as being more than just your online resume these days, but rather an online portfolio. And so
it's your billboard on the the information highway. It's going to be there forever. You're going to have your LinkedIn profile and your LinkedIn email address forever, until you decide to, leave this earth, whether it's in a rocket ship or not. So you need to spend some time taking care of that, because it is the one constant you will have for the next 50 years will be your LinkedIn profile.
Okay. And then getting onto some of the other social media platforms, because you go into extensive detail on LinkedIn, on the book, as far as the job search, the people search, and then using advanced Google search in order to try and find these people elsewhere on the web to make the connections. So let's take a briefly here on some of the other social media platforms. Facebook, everybody's on there. It's undoubtedly the largest platform for social media, and there's a lot of people talking about whether you should use it, for your business networking and connecting with contacts and organizing them in lists and all of that. And, there's a lot of work involved versus no, keep that, just strictly personal, keep all businesses out. But the one question that I have, about it, that may be interesting is before we have, that big debate on Facebook, if I'm a job seeker and I'm going around and I'm finding you on Facebook and I want to connect with you, what's the chances that you're going to accept, a friend request and lets a stranger into your personal profile just because they want to connect with you on a professional level?
Great question, rarely asked. In my opinion, I think that Facebook is for personal use, not for business, not for job hunting. More and more people are taking it that way. More and more people, job hunters, have had enough in terms of being asked for access to their Facebook profile by employers, which, by the way, I think you just tell them straight up that you're number one in my book. And if an employer wants that kind of information, you probably really don't want to work there. Personal opinion only.
Okay. So,
massive invasion of privacy. I have suggested people use it to be kept for social. To answer your question, would I accept requests? No, I wouldn't. Now, as a recruiter, do I use Facebook to find people? Absolutely. And there are ways to, as recruiters, there are ways to get around the back door to find out more about you through your Facebook profile. But I won't ask you to friend me. I'm going to pick up the phone and call you, or I'm going to go look at your LinkedIn profile. That's what your LinkedIn profile is for.
Okay. So, if I understand that, it's you're not going to try and friend somebody that you want to know more about, and you're not going to, accept friend requests from recruiters wanting to, or not from recruiters, but from job hunters wanting to, turn Facebook into a network. It's just more of a, if you don't know them, you're not going to accept any friend request or into your profile. You're just going to keep that strictly, friends, family, and, people you actually know.
And recruiters will tell you the exact opposite. So it really comes down to, yes, but it really comes down to a personal choice. I get 3,100 emails a day because of the books. I've got three levels of spam filters on my corporate email, and I still get people who call me because they do their due diligence. And I'm not suggesting anybody do that on my home number. So I like my personal life private, and I keep it that way, and I keep Facebook private. And as a business guy, how much time do I really have to spend on Facebook? Recruiters that are at a lower level, that are recruiting college people, yeah, probably more so. But you'd be more effective as a job hunter to actually join a couple of discussion groups on LinkedIn or discussion groups on Facebook that are around the areas of interest that you have that you want to work in, than just loading up your Facebook profile and accepting recruiters. That personal opinion again.
Okay.
And Twitter, the same thing.
Okay, Twitter's the same thing, because I was going to ask about Twitter here after Google Plus, but I was going to take it that Google Plus, is the same concept, that your personal profile is like Facebook, that you're only connecting with friends, family, and you're not using that for networking, as well. Is that your take on Google Plus too? Is that
breaking up on me there?
So is Google Plus, in your view, the same as Facebook, where your personal profile is your personal friends and family, and is Google Plus different in that it is acceptable to use your profile for networking?
So, in my opinion, again, Google Plus is acceptable for me anyway. That's how I use it. And what everybody has to remember is you only have so many hours in the day, right? As a job hunter, there's 86 bazillion things you can do every day to find a job. There are only a couple you need to do. So as a job hunter, you need to focus in on what you think is going to give you the best return for the amount of energy and effort you expend. And in terms of social media, for sure, recruiters start with LinkedIn. If they can't find what they're looking for in LinkedIn, they will go to Facebook. If they can't find what they want in Facebook, they'll go to Twitter or Google+. So the question is, why can't they find what they're interested in LinkedIn? And the answer is, you gave it a little while ago. People don't fill out those profiles correctly or sufficiently. So, I'm a big proponent of just do it once. Call me lazy, I don't care. But if you spend the time to, and by spend the time, I mean probably a day and a half, to properly fill out your LinkedIn profile, it's set it and forget it time, okay? It's like, I tell people, don't go to job. If you're going to go to job boards, because you really think that I'm crazy, then do the top 3 or the top 5 in your specific market space. Of the 52,000, you can't possibly get into them all, nor would you want to. And there's no central hub, so pick the top 5 that are going to do some good. If you're getting out of college, by the way, your alumni one is the first one, and your alumni on LinkedIn is the second one. But then you go to Indeed.com and Simply Hired. You set it up, and just like LinkedIn, you set it and forget it. Okay? In LinkedIn, recruiters are going to find you. They're going to come to you. With Indeed.com and Simply Hired, you've itemized what you're looking for. If that job appears anywhere in the world, and it's for you, they're going to send you a note saying, hey, by the way, Jacob, look at this job. Look at this job, it's for you. So set it and forget it, and then focus on the 10 employers, the 10 companies you want to work for. And what you've just done is you've given yourself, an extra 4 hours a day. Because a job hunt starts at 6 in the morning and ends at 4 in the afternoon, and you get a break in mid-morning for half an hour, you get a half an hour for lunch and a half an hour in the afternoon. So you get your full hour off like you would at any other job. It's a full-time job, getting a job. Starts at 6 a.m., ends at 4. And most people don't start it until 9, and they surf the job board for half an hour, 45 minutes, maybe an hour. They see the same job that they applied to 3 weeks ago that they're perfect for. It's still up, and now they're feeling rejected. And they go do something else. They go walk the dog, mow the lawn, or clean the house. No. Don't do that. Control your life, and you do that by Indeed, simply Hired, LinkedIn, set it, forget it, and then get on with the push for the other 9.5 hours of the day, going after what you want.
Okay, and I think I have gotten your views on social media outside of LinkedIn. Excuse me. And so your social media outside of LinkedIn, which is really, LinkedIn is better than all the rest, for finding the jobs. But, in Twitter,
LinkedIn's like oxygen.
Yeah.
Okay? LinkedIn's like oxygen. You don't have it, you'll die.
Yeah.
Simple.
And, a lot of people talk about networking on Twitter and all that. And I have, even as a young guy, I don't fully understand Twitter. I don't understand how you can make a meaningful connection in 140 characters or less. But I wanted to get your opinion on here, about controlling, your online presence, in a Google search, making sure that your information comes up first and giving a sense. What do you think about, having your blog site like a WordPress.com or, of any of the other blog sites where you blog about your experience, knowledge, thoughts about an industry, and then you use, like a Facebook page, a Google Plus page, and a Twitter account, as well as your LinkedIn as distribution channels for the content, so that during an advanced Google search,
That's exactly what I do.
Okay, exactly what you do. So when a Google search comes through, from a recruiter, all your profiles are coming up first, and it all leads, basically is leading back to your blog site. Or, your LinkedIn influencer blog. But being able to go through, so social media is best used in the practice of a distribution channel of your content as a job hunter versus networking.
So you're going to have to give me that question again because...
Okay, so social media outside of LinkedIn, your Facebook, your Twitter, your Google Plus, is not so much, for, networking or building those connections because they're not all that good at it, but they are good for distribution channels for your content to make yourself easier to find with all those breadcrumbs and making sure you're at the top of the Google searches. If I'm understanding you.
Yeah, I think the screen keeps going in and out. So I think what you asked me is, are the other social media sites good for distribution?
Yeah, better used as distribution, for displaying your knowledge to recruiters, than what they are as opportunities to create networks with people.
Yes, and that's the exact way the advertising industry works. If you've bought shampoo in the last couple of months, you probably bought a product from Procter & Gamble. You know who Procter & Gamble is, right?
Yeah.
So Procter & Gamble will make a shampoo, they'll shoot an ad, and what do they do with it? Do they stick it on their LinkedIn profile?
No,
Do they put it on their website?
No, they put it on Facebook, Twitter, and Google Plus, and probably
ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS, radio. Yeah, they're all just distribution channels for the ad, or in your case, for your expertise. That's all it's about. And all of those channels have one purpose, and that's to bring it straight back to Jacob.
okay.
All roads lead to Jacob. Right? That's what it's about.
I may try and use that as an ad targeting a company at some point.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
So I'll take that from you. Now, when doing that, though, would it be better to set up a page, like a Facebook page, or just use it as, from your personal profile, but have it as, a public post?
So the answer to that question is whatever is easiest for you to do.
Okay.
We're not all as sophisticated as, the brightest engineers out there. I certainly am not. When I started my blog years ago, like 7 or 8 years ago, I was on, I'm trying to remember the platform. And I wasn't on WordPress at the time. I was on another platform. And I would, but Amazon, LinkedIn, my WordPress blog, Twitter, and a couple of others have APIs. And at the time, 7 years ago, I was able to post on my blog, have it sucked through to the website for JM4JH, Global Marketing for Job Hunters, which got sucked through to Amazon, which got sucked through to Twitter. So I'd post it once, and the dominoes would all fall through about half a dozen of these sites, and would go out. So it was great. Now all the social media sites really all want to be the best, so they don't play well with each other again. It's like the job board thing, right?
Yeah.
So you have to figure out, where are you going to get the biggest bang for your buck? The answer is LinkedIn. So what's the second biggest thing? The second biggest thing is probably having your own WordPress blog, whether it's .com or a self-hosted blog through GoDaddy, for example. If you've got a blog and you only ever do 3 or 4 posts, it doesn't matter. You'll be found, because so few people will spend the time to do any of the stuff we talk about today. Most people will spend more, in fact, most people do spend more time planning their honeymoon than their wedding. Okay? With undesirable results. Most people spend more time thinking about what they're going to do on the weekend than what they need to accomplish at work. So a lot of people think about stuff. Very few people actually put what they think about into action. So anyone listening today even takes one of these ideas we've talked about, you're already ahead of 99% of the people who look just like you. Because you took action, whereas most people go, oh, that's a really good idea, and then go back, to reading the newspaper or watching television. That's just a simple fact. So do whatever's my point in this is, do whatever easiest for you. Don't make it overly complicated, because just doing something puts you ahead of 99.9% of everybody else. Just like what you're doing today. These interviews with me and, the really smart people that you interview over the next coming months, all it's going to do is get you more notoriety, because you've asked great questions, you're well prepared, and you're now going to share this. And the more people that watch this and share it, the more people learn about Jacob and what you do. So it's easy if you do something.
Yeah, and one of the things that, this may be a bit of a plug, but I would think podcasting is a great way to stand out in the crowd. I mean, think about this. If, let's say you started a podcast and you're interviewing, the Seth Godins or the Gary Vaynerchuks or, maybe even some of the, maybe not that high caliber, but maybe a little bit lower. Let's say, you're interviewing, executives and CEOs and everything, and you have that, distributed on your blog, throughout your social media and everything, and then, you go in and you apply, for a job, and they talk, and they, want to search for you and who you are, and they see that you're talking to, all these great, industry leaders and everything. That's going to put you ahead, at least in my opinion, than people that are just, hey, I did this at my company and now I want to apply over here. You can go, I did this at my company. I've learned from these, top, leaders in the industry, and now I want to use what I know and have learned into your company.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I agreed to do it when you asked me. It was, I mean, obviously I'm flattered. But if I can help in any little way advance your cause, you're just another person that has proven that doing something good, which you're doing. Guerrilla marketing is about, guerrilla means that you accomplish common objectives with uncommon tactics, as most basic form. And that's what you're doing. You're raising your profile by interviewing people that know a little bit about whatever it is that you want to interview them for. And you get caught up in that virtuous updraft, and away you go. It's brilliant. More power to you.
Yeah, and initially I was also going to ask you about your recommendations on writing a resume, but that is very detailed out in your book, and I would recommend that people go and buy your book to get that information.
Right?
What? The Guerrilla resume, it would be your recommendation over how to write a resume. And I thought it was brilliant because it does stand out from all the traditional resumes, and it's more likely, to get a good look over. And I would suggest that people, buy the book to find out about it, or they can go to your website, which is, if I remember correctly, gm4jh.com.
Absolutely, yeah. GM like the car, the number 4 and JH.com. And there's an audio there that has been downloaded 500,000 times. It's an interview with another author, and it's free. People can take advantage of it.
And people, can go to your YouTube channel, because I looked it up, and you do have a YouTube channel, and you've gone through the resume and everything. I don't think there's anything within the last year on there.
No.
But, I went back and I looked at it, and you've put in, your full seminars, 6-part, videos of the seminars that you've done, or the speaking, about, the job hunting, and, how you lay out a resume and everything. And, and I will put links to your website and to your YouTube channel so people can see how you recommend the resume into the show notes. Okay. And then the last question that I want to, ask of you today is, what has been some of the worst advice and suggestions that people have given in the industry, or people have heard and taken, and just really backfired? What would you say is the worst?
So I actually sat down and thought about that because I knew you were going to ask me that question. And the worst advice that is given consistently by friends, people who love you, is always don't aim so high. Followed by, if you don't follow it, who do you think you are? Okay? If you're going to take advice from someone, only take advice from someone who has been successful. Okay? Everybody has an opinion, Jacob. You know the rest of that line, and I'm not going to say it.
The cleaner version of that is
Yes.
opinions are like yesterdays. Everybody has one.
Exactly. Okay, well, you know where I'm going with this. People who actually do things in life are rare, are very rare. And if you want to go somewhere in life and accomplish whatever it is you want to accomplish, be it financial, spiritual, I don't know, you need to have guidance, absolutely. But you need to take guidance from or advice from people who have been successful. Not people who tell you, well, I'm telling you this because I don't want you to fail, or it's for your own good. Okay? Surround yourself with people who are either like-minded or at least uplifting, and take their advice. And take advice, think about it, and then decide if you should act on it or not. Does it push you towards your goals, or does it keep you from going forward? We're doing this Put America Back to Work tour. I've been working on this for 5 years. I can't tell you how many people tell me that I'm nuts. I'm just finishing this off now, and I'm going to go out and raise $4 million. And I'm going to go across America, and I'm going to take anyone that wants to come to this event. 20,000 people a shot. And I'm going to teach you in a full day seminar how to get a job. And I'm going to have Eric Huffington, Branson, Joel Osteen, a whole host of speakers come and talk. And this is part of the plan. And people have told me for the last 5 years, I'm insane. No, I'm not insane. I just see things a little bit differently. People said, there's no jobs out there. Well, there are lots of jobs out there. We talked about it a little bit earlier. People have said, well, why would you want to do this? You're not even an American. And I've answered that question as well. And what do you think? Why do you think people would come and speak? Because I'm not going to pay the speakers. I'm not going to pay the speakers a dime until people start landing jobs. Why would people like Arianna Huffington or Joel Osteen or anyone else like that care? Because they do, and they care because it's funny. I grew up in the States. I grew up at the United States Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, and I grew up in the United States Air Force Academy in the late 60s, early 70s. And when I grew up there, I would watch people. We were the only Canadians on the base, and only Navy people on the base as well. God, it's a long story. But I would watch people, my neighbors, on the weekend, get together and go out and build a school, or put up a church, or paint a church, or something like that. That was the America that I grew up in. I grew up at a time when everybody believed in community, and a man's word was his bond. And those are the principles that we're going to bring. Those are the principles I believe in, and I believe that most Americans believe in, and that's what we're going to bring back in this tour. And I believe that if we promise someone that they can get a job, they can come to this seminar, follow these instructions, get a job, and then when they're successful, send us money. I believe that everybody will. I believe that a man's word is still his bond. That's the America I grew up in. And I don't think we're too far from that, even though we've drifted over the last 20 years. And this is America, right? This is the country that won 2 world wars, put a man on the moon. And every generation of Americans has faced their trials and tribulations, and every single generation has raised, has raised up to fit that challenge. And this is no different. This is our challenge, and it's now time to put America back to work. And people are telling me I'm nuts. 5 years, I'm this close to launching, and I will do it, and I will be successful. And what I've done along the way, taking my own advice, is I've surrounded people who also believe that a man's word is his bond, and that we can do whatever we set out to do.
Well, Joel Osteen is a good person to team up with, and he's got a great message. He's got a great audience.
Great guy.
You're talking about, the Become a Better You and pastor of Lakewood Church, and so that is that's definitely a good person, there to help and bringing people together and motivation, and and one of the things that you touched on could be somewhat summarized as surrounding yourself, create your own mastermind group, for job hunting.
Brilliantly put. Brilliantly put. We, for a couple of years when we started this thing, we ran boot camps for job hunters. And we'd have Monday morning marching orders. You'd get a set of instructions for what you had to do during the week, and then we'd have a mastermind on Fridays. And we'd have groups of 10 to 20 people. And even after you got a job, you weren't able to leave the mastermind until everybody had graduated. That was the commitment you had to make to get into this thing. And it was interesting. We had, we had quote unquote true believers, and we had absolute, never going to happen, won't work. People join these boot camps, and we had a 94% success rate, over 5 years. That's really good, because when people actually come together and find out that other people actually care about each other, and that they'll actually share in an open and honest environment. I mean, I don't want to, I'm a guerrilla, I'm not a tree hugger, right? But I'm a pragmatist. Everybody has to believe in something besides themselves. And when people come together in a group like that and have problems and they share them, a problem over here is solved by someone over here who's either faced the same thing or looks at it a little bit differently. And that's all you're doing. So creating your own mastermind is absolutely critical. When we do this, put America back to work. For example, if you want to come to the event, you actually have to go and apply. You have to be chosen. And to be chosen, you have to have 10 people. 10 people say Jacob deserves to go to one of these Put America Back to Work events. And I believe in him, and he will do the work and find a job. And one of those people has to become you get 10 sponsors, but one of those people has to become your boot camp or your job search buddy who will keep you on track. And all those people, all of a sudden when you do this, all of a sudden you surrounded yourself with this hive of activity and expectation, and all of it very positive. Which, and so when you face a situation that you can't handle or that you don't quite know what to do with, there are people that are going, well, try this, or try that, or try this. As opposed to most people when they go to these job search clubs, and I've been to enough of them to realize, I don't mean to cut anybody down, but job search clubs have become, by and large, pity parties. Oh, ain't it awful? It's so bad out there. Oh, yeah, ain't it awful? It's not awful. It's not awful.
So you want to make sure that when you do, these groups, these masterminds, these sponsorships, however you want to set it up, that you're making sure that you're setting it up with positive people who are just going to, grind into you to get it done, and stay away from anybody just wanting to do the pity party, woe is me. So you want to make sure you're very selective in who you surround yourself with.
Yeah. 2 world wars, put a man on the moon. Come on. 2 world wars we won. Put a man on the moon.
Job hunting shouldn't be
This
hard in
is
comparison.
not rocket science, right? It's not.
Okay, and so I'd like to thank you for taking the time on being on the show. And what is the best way for people to connect with you?
Well, if they want to get more information, the best thing to do is go to the website. There's 1,700 articles there, a lot of videos. A lot of it is, like 98% of it is free. And for most people, all they need to do is either listen to the audios, watch the videos, read a couple of the articles, and they'll get unstuck. So go to, if you want more help, it's there as well. Go to the website, gmforjh.com. Start there.
Okay. And I would have held up a copy of your book because I thought it was great, but it's an e-book, and so all you would see is, just the screen. So, anyways, it's a really great book. I recommend everybody, go read it. It's filled with a lot of great resources, a lot of tactics, and it doesn't just fill you up with a bunch of fluff. It fills you up with executionable strategies.
Thank you very much. And on behalf of all the people that contributed to the book, there's about 40 recruiters who contributed anywhere from 400 to 1,000 words in the book. So it isn't just the ravings of one madman; it's the ravings of a complete collective of crazy people. So it's not just me. And their advice that they give away in the book, everything from Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn, is invaluable. And the people that contributed are the best that there are in the business. We were very fortunate that they contributed their time to it.
Yeah, and I even watched the video on your YouTube channel, the inspiration for the coffee cup caper.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and so I thought that was, an interesting strategy. One of the, when I say executionable strategies of how to get the attention and how to not request the interview, but request a business meeting. And I thought that was, really great. Interesting how he came up with the coffee cup caper, as an idea. But that is all detailed out in the book, also on your YouTube channel. And, your website stated as the best place to go to find out more information. And I'd like to thank you for your time, and I appreciate you coming on.
Jacob, thank you very much. Good luck in your search, and I want to hear about your success story soon.
Okay, thank you.
I hope you've got a lot out of that interview. That was a long interview. It did go over. I am going to have to work on being able to keep these interviews into more of a half-hour to 45-minute format, but there's a lot of gold in these interviews. There's a lot of great information that I want to be able to get to you. And so sometimes I catch on to something and it has me veer off onto another path and asking more and more questions. And plus, I want to be able to provide them the room in which they can then discuss in details what their answer is so that you get more and more actionable information that you can use. All right, so I know I said I was going to wait until the next episode to do this, but I'm going to go ahead and do this right now. If you are wanting to become a guest on this show, all you have to do is send an email. Give me a brief summary of what it is you want to talk about, whether you want to talk about, your success as an entrepreneur, your secrets to getting the job, getting your foot in the door, side hustles that you are doing, how you're building wealth, or how you're balancing out, the demands of your career with your family, your wife and kids. How are you raising great kids? We all want to know this information. So if you want to be able to become a guest on this show, and we'll do the interviews over Skype, just send me an email with a brief summary to hypodcast, hypodcast@outlook.com. And then from there, we would be able to go through and set up an interview. I forget here. Is it HY Podcast or Podcast HY? Oh, shoot. It's been a while, so I just need to go through here. Yeah, so it should be, HY Podcast. Yes. Okay, confirmed. HY Podcast. Send me a brief summary of what it is you want to talk about. We'll schedule a time for you to come on, do an interview, tell us your success story, and then we'll go ahead broadcast it like we are with these other interviews. Thank you for taking the time to check me out. Hit subscribe so that you never miss another episode. Depending on the platform you're on, leave me a rating, a review. Share this around with anybody that you think would find this information valuable. And I will be back again soon. Thank you for watching.